Greetings and welcome to my new calculus channel. My name is John Gabriel, and today I want to recall an old critique by Professor Jack Huizenga of, I think it was Illinois State. I don't know where he happens to be now, but the date on this was 6th of September 2017. So, this ignorant professor caused a lot of attention to be focused on my new calculus with his scorching critique. But by the way, it wasn't even a research critique or a valid academic critique. In fact, it had nothing in it that retorted anything I said. So he caused a lot of damage. And why did he cause a lot of damage? Well, because he's a mainstream professor of mathematics and he's a Harvard alumnus. Okay. So just before I continue, this critique was retracted after I pointed out his errors. And then he begged me not to mention his name again. And I told him that I would do so on one condition, that he apologize. He never did apologize. And so his critique stood amongst the mainstream. They all believed the rubbish he wrote. So there was a question on that trash heap called Quora. What do people think of John Gabriel's new calculus, which claims it is the only rigorous formulation of calculus in human history? Well, as I responded, Quora is a question and answer site that is basically run by a group of mainstream academics and their sock puppets. They control both the questions and the answers. And those who post questions or comments with opposing views have theirs mercilessly edited and deleted if need be. So, in a sense, it's Wikipedia esque because that's really what happens also in the Wikipedia talk section. Once they find that they can't get anywhere with you, they basically just ban your account or tolerate your account. And of course, one like me gets exasperated with idiots. So I start using foul language, and then they begin to use that as an excuse that I was banned. But that's not the real excuse. I was banned because they don't like being shown they are wrong. So one of the fools who sits on top of that trash heap is our dear Professor Jack Huizenga, a Harvard alumnus and mathematics teacher at Illinois University. So he says, there has been a completely rigorous notion of limit for well over 100 years. The only problem with that statement is that it's false. It's pure assertion. Okay. So the great mathematics historian Carl Boyer had this to say. He said that Cauchy, in his course d'analyse, stated that irrational numbers were to be regarded as limits of sequences of rational numbers. So since the limit is defined as a number to which the terms of the sequence approach, in such a way that ultimately the difference between the number and the terms of the sequence can be made less than any given number, the existence of such an irrational number depends, in the definition of the limit, upon the known existence, and hence the prior definition of the very quantity whose definition is being attempted. In other words, one cannot define the number square root of 2 as the limit of 1, 1.4, 1.41, etc. Because, why? Because to prove that the sequence has a limit, one must assume, in view of the definitions of limits and sequences and convergence, the existence of this number as previously being demonstrated, excuse me, or defined. Okay? So Cauchy didn't notice the circularity of his reasoning in this connection. Now, Huizenga didn't respond to that because he couldn't. So the next claim that he made was that rigorous treatments of infinitesimals are a bit more tricky. Well, that assumes that one, in the first place, accepts that infinitesimals are valid concepts, but have also been made. So you see again here, Huizenga makes a statement that is entirely false. It's assertion. And one can only assume that he's referring to the abortion known as non-standard analysis by a failed Jewish mathematician who was called Abraham Robinson. And even today, there are many academics who do not accept non-standard analysis. And in my opinion, it's pure rot because infinitesimals do not exist as well-formed concepts. Okay, do you understand that? Conceptus bieno is a Latin expression, which means well-formed concepts, if I said it correctly. I think I left out a word, but that doesn't matter. The buffoon wrongly assumes that the new calculus is only a reformulation, which is evidently false. And he goes on to talk about what interests mathematicians. But he's not a mathematician. I mean, getting a PhD doesn't make you a mathematician, for crying out loud. Your dissertation is only as worth, in fact, it's even less worth than the paper you wrote it on. So again, I gave him another quote from one of his colleagues in mainstream academics called Knisley. And Knisley says, clearly, our calculus course does not prepare scientists in other fields to recognize, understand, and utilize the calculus that many of their fields are based upon. Thus, when it comes to calculus, we don't get it the first time round, our colleagues don't get it, and our students are still not getting it. Those are strong words, aren't they, from a mainstream academic? It's no wonder that one of the most common occurrences in higher education is that of a non-mathematics faculty member discovering that something they were doing in calculus is not what they understood, okay? And at the very least, they feel justified in asserting that there is still a crisis in calculus instruction. So he says, all too often a concept, well, first of all, he says many of the associations are circular, and all too often a concept is associated with a concept that is defined in terms of the original concept. Clearing my throat. Are we referring to circularity here? Yes, of course. So, and then he says there is no point trying to remove limits or infinitesimals from a discussion of calculus. Wow. Now, that is an assertion which requires one to have rather large testicles because limit theory is circular and infinitesimal don't exist. But of course, Huizenga is an idiot, and he doesn't mind that he's saying certain things because he's a professor, and nobody's going to turn around and tell the professor that he doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Oh, he must be right if he said that. No, he wasn't right. And it's easy to see that Huizenga doesn't know anything about Newton's calculus because Newton knew nothing about limits or infinitesimals or any of that nonsense, okay? And so he says that my main objection is the treatment in mainstream via real analysis, and he says that I don't understand it, which is actually an outright lie and libel, in fact, because I understand it better than anyone on the planet, and I know it's wrong. And I've written an article, 6 simple reasons why your main calculus is flawed. Everything you need to know is in that article. So I reject real analysis, not because I don't understand it. Few can ever understand it as well as I. However, it deals with a topic about a non-existent concept, the real number. Real numbers don't exist because irrational numbers do not exist. How? As well-formed concepts, you idiots. In fact, until I arrived on the scene, no one before me and after Euclid understood what is a number. So I pointed poor Huizenga to this link, and it talks about how invalid Dedekind cuts and Cauchy sequences are in defining real numbers. So then he makes a statement which is quite a slap in the face. He says the errors in the new calculus are too numerous for it to be worth going through the whole text. Do you see the condescending dismissal in that statement? But it's rather funny he should say this because he goes on to show that there is not a single error. So if he only had read and the proof is that he retracted it later on. If there weren't errors in it, he wouldn't have retracted it, would he? So he was embarrassed. And he didn't study and he didn't reread the text carefully. So I don't want to go through this whole thing because it just brings back memories of this idiot who actually has done me a tremendous amount of damage in my career, in my life. And if I could sue him and I had the money, I would. But of course, there is a problem on not finding any honest lawyers. There is no such thing as an honest lawyer. And yeah, it's quite tragic, because if you read the rest of the text, you'll see how ignorant this professor is. And of course, all the idiots follow here: Marcus Cliver, David Joyce, David Ulrich, Anders Kaysork, Jack Huizenga, and that idiot Gilbert Strang, the prime idiot Gilbert Strang from MIT. So if you're not already a subscriber, become one. Tell your friends. Join me on Academia. This is my Academia channel. I will place a link to it in the details section. And hopefully I'll be chatting with you soon. I'm John Gabriel, and this is a new calculus channel. Till next time, goodbye.